Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're so glad that you're in our audience, whether you're watching us live or if you're watching us on a repeat or if you're listening to us on a podcast. We're really glad that you decided to be in our audience. Remember to like, share, and comment. We love all of your comments. Honestly, you guys make the show. Without you, it's not a lot of fun. George Dismuke says, I'm here. I feel like I've been beaten with a knotted plow line, but I'm here. I'm sorry, George.
I can sure empathize, George.
C.W. Hawes said, howdy, Rob and Joan. Hi,
Hey,
C.W.
yeah.
Paul Hollis said, good evening, Rob and Joan. Good evening, Paul. And
Hey, Paul.
Everybody, I saw today on Paul's little reel that he puts out that his new book, London Bridges Falling.
Audiobook.
Yeah, Falling Down. The audio is finished in about a month. You should be able to listen to it on Spotify and other places. Joe Conjal says, I'm back.
Hey, Joe.
LOL. Hi, Rob and Joe.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Joe. We missed you a lot. Marjorie Deering says, TikTok, another Wednesday. Bring it on. Joy Shelton York is in the house. Hi.
Hi, Marjorie.
Yeah, Joy Shelton says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hi, Joy. Good to see you. Oh, Paul Rushworth Brown. Good morning. Hi, Rob and Joan, all the way from Sydney, Australia. We're so glad that you could join us tonight, Paul. Tonight here, morning there.
Yeah, time traveler.
Our time traveler.
Well, I don't know how long my voice is going to hold out, but don't forget to stay tuned for Voice of Indie podcast after our show. There's a little tutorial right afterwards. Blog tells you how to get over to Blog Talk Radio. Book World, The Great Escape. We want to remind you of that. It's Wednesday afternoons at 1 o'clock Central Time. That's at CJ Peterson on YouTube. Episode Rewind is every Saturday, where we replay some of our old episodes. And this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S., we're going to have children's author Jim Carlson. I think we used to have his book here, but I think our granddaughter has it.
Our granddaughter has it.
He's with Fox.
Our great-granddaughter.
Fox Point Publishing. And next Wednesday, we'll have Magnolia Bluff Reveal Part 3. And the three authors, or actually four authors, Brakefield and Berkey, Charles Brakefield and Roxanne Berkey, they wrote The Killer Enigma in the Magnolia Bluff series. That's book 16. That's already out. That came out in August. And we didn't get really a chance to talk about it because we had a show preempted there. But I guess JJ and Joe are at it again.
I like JJ and Joe.
In The Killer Enigma.
Like
Joe
them.
Conjul's book, he's going to be a guest as well. Second Chances, book 17. That's coming out on September 18th.
Can't wait,
Available
Joe.
for pre-order right now. And C.W. Hawes, who's with us tonight in the audience, 10 million, and so is Joe.
So is Joe.
10 Million Ways to Die is his book, book 18. There will not be a pre-order on that, I understand. That comes out October 23rd. So mark your calendar to jump onto that one. That's book 18.
And be here next week, or be square.
Book 18 in the series already. That's just insane. We've got a new release to tell you about as well. Coming out tomorrow is the second edition of Prison to Possibilities.
From Prison to Possibilities.
Yes, From Prison to Possibilities. You want to show the cover there?
Yes, sure.
It's available on Amazon and at Indie Booksource, through Indie Booksource. That's author Kim Nugent. So want to check that out.
It's a nonfiction.
And of course, Joe's pre-order, I've got that down twice. So we're going to mention that twice.
Making sure that you're...
Yeah, second chance. That gives you your second chance to get that one. Did want to mention the top 7 countries. Don't do this every show, but the top 7 countries that are downloading the audio podcast in the last 30 days. Of course, the U.S. is top, but in order: UK, Canada, Bangladesh, France, Brazil, and Australia is pulling up the rear.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Let's talk it up out there and get people to go over and download that audio.
Paul says, looking forward to October 4th.
There you go.
George Dismuke says, Paradise My Prison will be back up on Amazon within about a week. Yay.
Yay.
That's good. And then Joe Conjal said, C.W. Hawes' cover is awesome.
Yeah. And Paul Rushworth Brown said, looking forward to October 4th because he will be on the show that night. So we're looking forward to it too. Get to visit with you for a while. Well, we've taken up a lot of time.
Well done.
My goodness.
Paul says. Okay. Yes, we have a really wonderful author here today, and you've met her before.
Right. Return guest.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd like to bring in Teri M Brown. Hi, Teri.
Hi.
How are you today?
We're really well. How are
Wonderful.
Doing wonderfully. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
you? Oh, thanks for being on here. Your first book, let me bring that up, that we had on the show was Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. And if you all remember, it was 3 generations, am I remembering correctly?
That's correct.
Of Ukrainian women and their life and their immigration, some of them, of course, to the United States and what happened to them. And it came out just about the time as the whole Russian-Ukraine thing blew
In fact,
up.
it came out 2 weeks before the current Ukrainian crisis.
I remember.
It was really crazy. It's horrible to say something like that was good timing because there's never really good time for a war. But in terms of my book, it was incredible timing.
Yes.
So I was asked a lot of times, how did you know? And it's like, no, I didn't know.
No, it takes more than 2 weeks to write a book,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Paul Rushworth Brown says, hi, Teri.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah. So we're going to talk.
Sounds fascinating too.
Oh, he also said, sounds fascinating. Sorry. Now I'm sorry. I'm getting so many messages, not from you guys. You keep making your comments. It's from Facebook and stuff like that. Yes, he said, sounds fascinating. So having said that, we're going to talk about your new book, which maybe you want to tell them what this book is about.
So this book is set in World War II, but it's not your typical war book. The main soldier here, his name is Jacob, and he is a first-generation German American. So his parents were born in Germany, emigrated to the United States. He gets married. He has a child. And this was after a very difficult childhood. His father dies, and it's during the Depression, and he gets married. He thinks he's going to have his happily ever after, and World War II hits. And he has to make a decision as to whether he's going to fight in the war. He eventually makes the decision that he will. However, he believes he's going to fight the Japanese because the Japanese are the ones that bombed Pearl Harbor, and it was an enemy he felt like he could really get behind. They look different than him, they talk different than him, they eat different foods than he does. You could look in your neighborhood and pick out someone who was Japanese. And so he just felt like he could do that, and he ended up in Germany. And he realizes that he's more like the enemy than he is different from the enemy. So this book looks at war from his point of view, but also from his wife, who's left behind, and from his 4-year-old son's point of view, both as a child and as an adult man reflecting back.
And the name of this book is An Enemy Like Me.
Yeah. And if you look at the cover there, you'll see that he's an American soldier, but in the reflection, that's a German soldier.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the idea was, he was literally 1 generation away from being on the other side of the war.
On talking about that, An Enemy Like Me, and he realizes they're a lot like him. My father fought in the Pacific, and he was on an island, and I forget which one. I should know, but I forget. And he was walking down the beach one day, and a young Japanese, and my dad was young, like 19, 20 years old, probably 20 at this point. And a young Japanese soldier was walking towards him on the beach. And my dad was thinking, am I going to have to kill him, face to face like this? There's nobody else on the beach, just two young men taking a walk on the beach. And the Japanese soldier just walked past him, and he walked past the Japanese soldier and just left each other alone. And he said that's when he realized they were more alike than they were.
Right. It's one of the things I hope that when people read my book, that they're willing to start thinking about, like what really constitutes an enemy, and how necessary is it to have an enemy. And in war situation, I understand that in a war, it's either you're coming home or the other guy's coming home, and you have to do what you have to do. But in our general society, do we really have to have enemies? Is there really a reason to have us's and them's? And, like, what can we do to move past that idea that we have to have people that we hate, or people that we have phobias about, or people that are in a different class than us. And therefore, and I want people to think about it, because the truth is there isn't a them out there that isn't closer to you than they are further from you. Because if you start looking at your similarities, you're going to find that what differences you have really don't matter that much. That's kind of what I hope people will think about anyway.
Because we really are all alike,
We are.
We want to, most of us want to get married. Some of us don't, but a lot of people do want to get married or have a significant other anyway, and raise a family and have their children to have a better life than they had. I mean, that's always been, and I think that's the truth worldwide over for everybody, no matter who you are. Well,
I know that when my husband and we rode a tandem across the United States during the summer of 2020. And so it was a crazy 3,000-mile ride. And, and it was during the summer of 2020. So not only was it COVID summer, but that was political unrest summer, with things burning and people, acting all crazy.
Yeah.
And what we found was we met wonderful people.
Yes.
All the way across the United States. We never really ran into anything that was ugly or horrible. And even people that were significantly different from us. I mean, we stood in the yard of one man who had a political sign for someone who was different than I would vote for. Yeah, I'm not going to get into who's who. I'm just saying it was different. And you knew it was different because they had the sign and you knew what you would vote for. And yet we stood in his front yard and had a wonderful conversation, because who he was going to vote for did not really define who he was as a person. What he wanted from his life was no different than what I wanted from mine. Maybe we might go about it a little differently, but what we want is the same. And we just found that when you focused on what people, what brought you together in the first place, those things that could separate you really are insignificant, and they just don't matter. Never once when we were riding across the United States did anyone ask me my political affiliation. They never asked my religious affiliation. They never asked, my sexual orientation. None of those things mattered to anyone, right? What mattered was, oh, wow, you're riding a bicycle across the United States. Where do you live? Oh, hey, I once visited the coast of North Carolina. And then, bam, you're talking.
That's right.
Or I have a bicycle, or I once, or is this any harder than doing a tandem kayak, and the kinds of things that we would hear. And those are the things that we focused on. And then anything else really was inconsequential.
And the first thing I asked you was, how do you like riding a tandem bike? Because we're cyclists. We bike all the time. We used to bike 12 miles a day. And we're down from that. But
now we go out and look at our bicycles.
We ride our bicycles. We ride our
bicycles. Get exhausted and close to the
and I have Missy in a basket in the front, and she's the queen of the whole neighborhood here. She looks out over everybody. Joe Conchel said, very nice cover, which I agree, it is a really nice.
Thank you, Joe.
And Joy Shelton York says, great cover.
Thank you.
It is.
Along those lines, I kind of found that when you watch the news a lot, that has a lot to do with shaping your view of what the world is around you. And I told Joan when we got back that I was a little nervous about going in the first place. We went on a 2-month trip this summer, and I was a little nervous about what we would find when we stopped, and we went
in different places, right?
Desolate places
because of all the unrest,
cities, and
right?
Because of all, but you know what? Everything was pretty much the way it was the last time we traveled. I mean,
so that's the thing that my husband and I found too. In fact, one of the things that we have stopped doing is watching the news.
Yeah.
I get a news aggregator in the morning that gives me, about 20 headlines. And I just kind of, okay, so now I know there was an earthquake, somebody's angry at somebody, I've got kind of the list, and then I don't look again.
We check and see where the hurricane is going to hit.
Exactly. I do have to know that because I live on the coast of North Carolina. So
we live in Florida.
So.
Yes. So you understand, but in terms of actually, I pay attention to the news just enough to kind of have a general feel for what's happening in the world. I don't want to be blindsided by something big that I should have known about.
Right.
But generally, 15 minutes of news a day is all a person needs. Yes. And anything more than that, and you just start to really, I don't know. And it depends. And it's funny, you can watch several different stations and the same news is across all of them, but you wouldn't necessarily recognize it because they have such a different angle that they're hitting it. And so that the truth is somewhere in between all of that. And so right. I just don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And going across the United States that way was the best way to learn that.
Right.
Because you would have thought that we would have met, horrific people and everything was going to be burning and it was going to be awful. And we saw nothing like that. It was, everyone was just friendly and wonderful. And,
not that there aren't bad things happening. Because
no, there are, but the news, of course, focuses on that. The news in no way was going to say, Teri and Bruce went on a lovely ride today and they met some people and spoke in a gas station parking lot. I mean, it's not, it doesn't make the news. Someone would have had to try to blow us up or shoot us.
That's right.
And that's a shame.
CW says it's best not to watch the news.
I agree, CW.
And the what you're talking about is that they sensationalize things anyway. And so we have one meteorologist that we listen to when hurricanes are coming because he does not hype it. He doesn't sensationalize it.
Right.
He's not like, oh my God, the sky is falling. We're all
Run
going
for
to
the hills.
Right. He doesn't say that at all. He says, okay, we've got some time here. Get all your supplies in and stuff. You know the drill.
Right.
You live in North Carolina.
Yep.
Marjorie Deering says, when I was growing up eons ago, I remember the rule being you don't discuss religion or politics. That was right.
Yep.
I think there was a lot of wisdom in that. There's so much division over different ideologies instead of all the rest we can agree on. I agree, Marjorie.
Yeah.
And that's what Teri's hitting upon is that we were tourists in lots of places. In Texas, we were not. We were doing podcasts and book signings and had a great time and visiting with friends. But
good friends,
really good friends. But in South Dakota and the Badlands and the Black Hills and in Colorado, we were doing the tourist thing and everybody was a tourist. And we met people in restaurants that were not tourists, that were locals. And, you're talking about just fun things. You're not talking about, what do you think about so-and-so? Which side do you fall on?
And really, it's like none of those conversations about politics or religion ever change anyone's mind. No. And the only thing
just aggravates the heck out of you.
Yeah. And everybody then has to dig their heels in and say that they're right. And I do my best to just stay, apolitical and a-religious. I have my own political leanings and religious beliefs, but I don't have to tell them to everyone because they're mine. And if you and I were sitting personally and you wanted to have a conversation, I mean, I'm not going to not converse with you about it, but there's just no need to, I just don't see how it helps anything. I don't see how it helps.
I think if you're the type of person who's open and who has respect for everyone's ideologies and beliefs, religious or otherwise, you can learn things. Actually.
Yes, you can. You can.
And so I do like to talk about that. That doesn't necessarily mean that, I'm going to.
But it's probably not where you start a conversation. You don't meet someone new and immediately say, "So, what religion are you?"
Right. Yeah. What are your political beliefs?
How are you going to vote this year? I mean, it's not how you start. You probably reserve those kinds of conversations for people that you recognize are more like-minded in terms of openness. And then you think, boy, this would be a good conversation to have. I'd love to know their thoughts.
And that's the interesting thing, is that we have so many friends from so many different ideologies. I mean, the huge spectrum, but we're all people that care about people and love people and are interested. And so we learn amazing things from all these people. Right. And I think that some people that we know think we're kind of wacky, that we have certain friends that
we are kind of wacky.
We are kind of wacky. But there's such good people, and they know things that I've never heard of. Right. And so I find it fascinating. I don't have to.
I think Joe had one.
Okay. Joy Shelton New York said, I so agree. Yeah. That's right. I know Joy. I know she would. And Joe Conchel says, the weather folks, and he lives in your neck of the woods, by the way. Okay. He's from North Carolina. The weather folks live for those stories. They can't wait to break in and fill your evening with the same info over and over all night. And when this last, the last one was coming, we had to evacuate him. And the weather was on 24/7. It was
okay. So the weather here was on 24/7, and by the time it got here, we had some rain and wind. I mean, we had some wind. We actually lost electricity for a couple of hours. Some tree went down somewhere, but it wasn't a big deal. I mean, we've had severe thunderstorms come through that were as bad as what we got, because by the time it got up here, it was nothing, but they talked it up. And we have a lot of new neighbors that have never been through a hurricane. And so afterwards, they're all standing in the street kind of, wow, that was a hurricane. And it was like, no, folks, no. That wasn't.
That was a bad thunderstorm.
Yeah, it was like, no. Let me explain to you that what you just witnessed was a little bit of wind. It was, it was nothing. Yeah. So I agree. It's pretty funny how that works.
I know. Joy Shelton New York said, I think the media often inflames the division. Well, they do, Joy. That's the whole point. They sensationalize it, and they want everybody to sit at home and go, oh my gosh, and
they want everyone to pick a side, and rather than giving everyone information and letting you make a decision,
and tune in to the news.
Yes. Yeah. So and instead of giving you just information, I remember when I was a little kid, my parents would watch the news, and it was, 30 minutes, and then they would discuss what they heard and make their own decisions about what it meant. And now the news stations more or less tell you what you're supposed to believe about what it is that they're telling you. And so it depends on which station you listen to as to what it is you believe when you're done hearing the story. And I think that's the sad thing across the board. I don't care where you stand on the political spectrum.
Right.
Whatever news channel you listen to is going to give you what it is that you're wanting to hear. And if you were to listen to a different news channel, you would get a different story. You may not like it, but you're going to get a different story, and it's,
We need to take a short break.
Absolutely.
And so that our sponsors can tell you what you need to know.
What books to buy.
One of the commercials is for Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes. It is, at the end, it says it's available, blah, blah, blah. It won't be available for a couple of weeks, a week or two, hopefully in a week.
Maybe a week.
But you can get a hold of George. You can get a hold of us if you're interested.
We'll help you.
We'll help connect you.
Yep.
So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, folks.
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. 2 new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
And we're back. And as we said, it will be.
It will be.
It will be. And also, Marjorie Deering, who the first commercial, that was her commercial, but it is Deering, says the weather broadcasters probably imagined the rare bit storm is probably their only opportunity to make the most of their time in the limelight, those poor folks. Yeah.
That's true.
I think they're pretty tired by the time.
I think at the end, they kind of wish they hadn't got it started.
And CW says, yellow journalism makes money and news is about making money for the company.
Yeah,
and
true.
That's right. Joe Conjal says, it's the same as when the president speaks and then the networks have to tell us what he just said. Taking 3 times longer than the actual speech was. Oh my gosh, Joe.
That's really true.
That is so true. Oh yeah. Marjorie meant big storm. Oh, and I read it bit storm. Big storm.
It was a bit of a storm.
Yeah, it was a bit of a storm. Oh dear. You're absolutely right, Joe. It's like they do that. And when anything happens too, they have to take it apart.
So when we talked earlier, you indicated you wanted to read.
Yeah, I would love to read.
Or are you gonna? Which book could this be from?
So this is going to be From an Enemy Like Me.
Okay.
And it is at the point where Jacob is married. He's married to Bonnie, the love of his life, and they have a little boy. The little boy's name is William. He is at this point not even yet walking when this scene takes place. So now I have to put on my glasses and show everybody that I'll be 60 soon. So, so I can't read without them anymore. All right. Life was idyllic for Jacob and his small family. The move to the apartment above Livingston's changed their lives from ones of hardship and making do to ones of comfort and ease. With 2 full bedrooms, a larger living room, and a kitchen substantial enough to hold a full-size table, they more than doubled the space of their newlywed abode. Not to mention, the landlord was friendlier, and the money they saved grew very substantial. Jacob reflected on the last 12 months. He watched his wife grow heavy with child, participated in the birth, and now William, at 9 months old, neared toddlerhood. Despite being so young, he was on the brink of walking. He often stood at the couch with a quizzical look as if to say, how can I get from here to there on my own steam? In no time, William would be running from place to place with breathless parents trailing behind. Jacob let out a sigh halfway between contentment and exasperation. Except for the tension between his mother and his wife, he couldn't imagine life being any better. He still held out hope that his mother would come around, but she sure was taking her time. Even a baby hadn't softened his mother's stance, and although Jacob took William by to visit regularly, the chasm between the women remained impenetrable. Shaking off the exasperation, he headed down the stairs to do a little extra work for Johnny. It was Sunday, but Johnny had a few small projects in the showroom that needed attention, and Jacob had the time to help. When he arrived, Johnny was already working, whistling along with the Metropolitan Opera auditions of the air. Jacob didn't much care for opera, much preferring the orchestra's big band sounds, but Johnny listened to this broadcast weekly as an avid fan. At 5:14 p.m., a news bulletin interrupted the show, a news bulletin that would change the course of Jacob's life forever. Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor, a U.S. base in the Hawaiian Islands, and declared war on the United States and Great Britain. It was December 7th, 1941. The workroom, where Jacob had been repairing a broken leg of a small table, became deathly still. Jacob slowly sank to the ground. A roaring sound, that of blood rushing through his veins, filled his ears. A war. The country he loved was at war. The war brewing in Europe was not news. Those issues had been ongoing for years. However, he had maintained a strong conviction that the United States would not become involved in another war. The World War over 2 decades before had been too devastating. American politicians did not seem inclined to put the country at risk again, and Jacob agreed wholeheartedly. Except, now Japan had bombed his country and declared war. Every conviction he held the moment before the announcement, those of neutrality and isolationism, were no longer valid. Jacob stood and glanced at Johnny, who no longer focused on his work. "Go," he said, "go to your wife and son." Jacob turned and raced up the stairs. He wanted to hold his family close and protect them. From what, he was not yet sure. When he pushed open the door, he found Bonnie sitting on the floor with her hair down around her shoulders, playing with little cars with William. They both looked up happily as he entered the room, and William crawled to his father for his "I'm back from work" kiss. Jacob dutifully kissed his son as he sought out Bonnie's eyes. His fear must have been evident because she stood slowly, smoothed down her skirt, and said, "What is it, Jacob? You look like you've seen a ghost. Is it your mother? Is everything okay?" "Bonnie, the United States, Japan." He couldn't say it. He caught her eyes again. "What, Jacob? The United States and Japan what? I don't know what you're talking about." Wordlessly, Jacob turned on the radio in time for Bonnie to hear the repeated news that Japan had declared war. Somehow, the proclamation within the walls of his cozy home, a home filled with love and laughter, made it more real and more terrifying. He scooped William up off the floor, moved quickly to Bonnie's side, and held his family close.
No, that was very powerful, actually. It really was. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. It really did. My dad was in Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. He was working on the Navy, in the Navy. Joe Conjal says, "Great reading, great voice for reading. Brought me right into the story." Marjorie Deering says, "Wonderful."
Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, my dad was at Pearl Harbor, and
well, this story came about for me because my grandfather fought in World War II. And I'm German American, but many, many generations. I think my family has been here since the middle of the 1700s. But with a last name like Buffmeyer, I mean, we're definitely German. And, and my grandfather fought in World War II, and he ended up in Germany. And like most people in the war, he didn't talk much about the war. But one time as a teenager, he said something to me that when I was trying to come up with an idea for a book, that came rushing back to my head. And what he said was, "I always wondered if the person on the other side of my gun was a cousin."
Yeah.
And that's kind of where this book started, was what would it be like? I mean, it was like that for my grandfather, despite 200 years of our family living here in the United States. What would it have been like for someone who had only been here for a generation? And that's how Jacob was born. This idea that he was this first generation, and he grew up in a home that spoke German, and ate German food and had German traditions. And he lived in a German community. And that German community, after World War I, started changing because they didn't want to be German, because it wasn't something anyone wanted to be anymore. And so despite having been born in the town of New Berlin, without moving, he became a resident of North Canton because they changed their name, and stores changed their names. And my grandfather even changed his name. It used to be Buffenmeyer, and he changed it to Buffmeyer. I guess he thought that was less German. It sounds just as German to me, but he was trying to Americanize it, make it sound less German. And that's what people did. And so this book explores that idea too, this idea of, like trying to change yourself to fit into whatever community you're in. And, how does that, it can damage people.
Oh, for real.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
To not be able to be who they are, and to be afraid of who they are.
Imagine being a Japanese American.
Exactly. And then something that I have in the story that a lot of people do not know existed. We all understand that there were the Japanese internment camps, and they were horrific. But do you know they had German internment camps as well?
Yes.
So German Americans who were too friendly with what they considered people who were Nazi supporters. So if you were considered, a Nazi supporter in some way, you could be put in a German internment camp as well. They were not as prevalent as the Japanese because it was harder to look at someone and say, oh, that's German.
Exactly.
And so it was a little harder, but all you had to do was know too many people back home in the old country. So.
Marjorie Daring says, can you imagine how horrendous those concerns must have been during the Civil War? I wrote a short story with that theme at one time. Yeah.
There were brothers fighting brothers.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And recently I've begun to understand a little bit what that was like, because we've had so much unrest in our country, and it's scary. When you were reading that, it made, and you speak about the fear, you wrote about the fear, and it just hit me really hard what that must have been like for our parents, your grandparents.
Can you imagine you're sitting there listening to, an opera show, and in breaks, breaking news.
You're at war. No, I can't. It's horrible.
Well,
and it sends goosebumps up my arms when I think about it.
We all remember what 911 was like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was on a small scale. It was huge for us, but it was on a very small scale compared to the World War,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, on a happier note, when we were talking about the weather, George had a comment. He said, in Latin America, the weather is always presented by some gorgeous babe, so none of the male watchers ever know whether it's going to rain or not. Thanks, George. We needed that.
That was our comic relief.
Yes, we needed a little comic relief.
Well,
yes.
I tell everyone how to reach her.
All righty, I can do that.
The book giveaway, too. We're going to have a book giveaway, everybody.
We do, absolutely.
We know we never put up the ticker.
Oh, there we go.
Here, this is a visit with author Teri M Brown, in case you
don't know who this is.
Hi.
All right. Teri's website is terimmbrown.com, and I'm going to spell it this one time, TERIMBROWN. And her Facebook is Teri M Brown Author. And this is so weird. Twitter.
It is. That's what it is. It's
I know that's what it is. X comes up now instead of Twitter on my phone, but her X Twitter.
It's hard to even say that with a straight face, isn't it?
It is.
It's my past Twitter. It's the one I'm not married to anymore. It's my ex Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
The social media formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
I mean, oh Lord, help us. So her Twitter account is at Teri M Brown 1.
Well, what's her ex Twitter account?
Same.
Oh, okay.
Instagram is Teri M Brown _author.
One of the best ways to find all of this is if you go to my website, I've got all of the little icons and just click them. Because when I was trying to create these, none of them would let me have the same one.
No, I know.
And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't even keep up with who I am.
You have come very
done
close.
very
You've
well,
done
though.
well.
So again, her website is TeriMBrown.com, and that's Teri, Teri M Brown, BROWN.
That's not her ex website. It is
It's
her.
it's my current website. Yes.
And LinkedIn is Teri M Brown. And here is her email. It's Teri at TeriMBrown.com. And remember, it's Teri with an I, Teri.
Okay, get your
One R, one
fingers
I.
ready. Here's your book giveaway today. The first 3 people to email Teri at TeriMBrown.com will win an ebook copy of An Enemy Like Me. So everybody get in there and get typing. If you're not watching this live, if you're watching this later on YouTube or whatever, feel free to go ahead and write to Teri. She may have extra copies that she's willing to give away. Not everybody may have claimed them or whatever, or you might catch her on a good day. And
Hey, I might just feel really friendly. You should definitely reach out.
Yeah, she wants to hear from you. Or if you're just listening to this, on the audio 6 months from now, go ahead and give her send her an email.
And also, would you please subscribe to our Meet the Author YouTube?
Yes, at Meet the Author.
Yes,
podcast.
Please do that.
Okay.
Meet the Author podcast on our YouTube channel. All right, we've got a Robert. Well, hi,
Hey,
Robert White, also from Sydney, is in the house. Says ex-Twitter, one step away from a doctor whose social media of exterminate.
Robert, I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And okay, we need to take our second break before the clock runs out. And we're going to come back and talk about what you got on the drawing board right now.
Yeah,
sounds great.
You're getting ready to release on the world. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than 3-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book 1 of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
And we're back.
And we are.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been fun. It's been sad and it's been silly. And it's been really, I mean, we've gone through great social issues and then
I like emotions. It's kind of my thing, so that's good.
Emotion.
Well, I'm very emo, so what can I tell you? All right, we're going to talk about your next book. Yes. This is it, right?
That is it. That is my new cover that was just released yesterday.
Daughters of Green Mountain Gap.
Yep.
Okay. You want to tell us a little bit about that and when it will be available? And
so Daughters of Green Mountain Gap will be available on January 23rd, 2024. It is about an 1890s healer woman in the mountains of North Carolina, so Appalachian. The healer women there are called granny women. So she was a granny woman from generations of granny women. Her daughter does not like the way her mother does healing. She believes that she does more harm than good. She ends up going to college in Boston to become a nurse and intends to bring modern medicine to her mountain town. And then her mother and she clash quite a bit over, who understands medicine the most. But in the end, they find that maybe neither one of them have answers, because sometimes there are things that happen medically that doctors can't fix. And so it was an event will bring them together again, and it happens through the eyes of the granddaughter. So it's another 3-generation. I love 3-generation stories because it allows me to look at a topic from 3 points of view, and you don't have to wonder why these points of view are so different, because just the ages make things different. You were talking about 9/11, and I know where I was at 9/11, and I know how I felt, and I can tell you all those things. And my children were between the ages of 3 and 11. And so what they remember is different than what I remember, despite the fact that we were in the same spot. And my grandchildren weren't born. And when they learn of 9/11, it will be, first and second hand and third hand. And by the time my great grandchildren hear of 9/11, they're going to think about it in the same way that I thought about the Great Depression, which was, why are we still talking about this?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember going and sitting at my grandparents' house, and inevitably the Depression would come up. And I would think, why are we still talking about this? Right. And it wasn't because I was a horrible child. It was because, to me, it's long gone and over. Why are we still talking about it? So the 3 generations is a wonderful way for me to be able to explore topics and really look at it from, how do you see this as, we move through time? So.
Our oldest daughter is about your age. So all of our children were adults during 9/11, and most of our grandchildren were born already. But it didn't affect all of us the same way. Our children and us, yes. Yeah, because they were all adults, so we all felt the same way. But the children, depending on what age they were,
exactly,
because 2 of them were just born that year. So it was a lot different than the ones that are older than them,
Right. And even like my son, who was 11, he remembers things, but he had totally different life experiences up to that point. I saw it from the perspective of like, even though I wasn't around for Pearl Harbor, my mind immediately went rushing back to those kinds of things. And I wondered if we were heading into a World War III and all of that. Whereas he was 11. He didn't have those worries. He had different worries, and it's interesting how two people can be in the same spot witnessing the very same thing and walk away with two very different ideas about what they just saw. And a lot of times it's just because of experiences. What have they or have they not had?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Perspective. I mean, your perspective is, whether it's a physical perspective or an emotional perspective, sociological perspective or an age perspective, it's all perspective. I mean,
it is, and it changes how you see things. And so it's like I said, I love doing 2 or 3 points of view, and I love making them different ages like that, because it really allows for those characters to be significantly different, and you don't have to work really hard to make them so. They're just different merely because they have different experiences due to their age.
Exactly.
And I love that. And I also love the play between family, because I know that, moms and daughters don't always get along. And a lot of times grandmas and the grandchildren get along so much better, and the kids are standing there going, well, you never treated us like that, and all of those things that happen. And it allows you to pull out different parts of the personalities and things based on who they're talking to and what kind of tension might be between them. So
when our one daughter, we were living in California at the time, and this was our first grandchild, was 8 months old, and we were at Disney. We all had passes. We were pass holders to Disneyland, and we were at we were watching a parade, and I had bought my grandchild so many things. Oh no, this was when she was older. This was when she was like 2, not when she was 8 months old.
Did she have the ears? You got her all the ears, right?
She had a rose that lit up, because Beauty and the Beast was the thing that year. She had, I think, like the sword that lit up, and yes, she had the ears. And
those little carts that they go down the street with. She went up to us. I'll take one of each.
One of everything. Yes, I'll take
So she's trying to hold all these things, and she's 2. And then I bought her an ice cream, and she didn't want the ice cream, so she wanted shortbread cookies. And I said, oh, I think I could find one up here in this shop up here. I'm pretty sure they sell them. And my daughter said, what the heck happened to you, Mom?
First of all, we wouldn't have got any of the gadgets. And if we got any of them, we would have gotten one. And there's no way that you would have gotten us cookies after we wouldn't eat ice cream. Like, that would have never happened. And it's like,
never,
yeah, that's
never. She said, what happened to you? I don't understand it.
It's like I became a grandma. Being a grandmother, I have decided, is the best thing in the world. I loved being a mom. I really did. I thought that was a wonderful job. But boy, as soon as I became a grandma, it was like, whoa, someone didn't tell me that the best was yet to come. Being a grandmother is awesome.
Being a mom was great. It was my favorite thing too. But there were times when I wanted to throw them right through the plate glass window.
Oh yeah. Pull all your hair out,
But grandchildren are your reward for not doing that.
That's what I tell people all the time, that grandchildren are your reward for letting your children live.
Exactly right. I am so glad I didn't act on that impulse, because Jessie, a lot of our audience know our daughter, Jessie. She's our youngest daughter, and she has our 2 youngest grandchildren. Her daughter is exactly like her. And she just laughs about it all the time. We laugh all the time. She is always saying, I know, I'm getting my just desserts now, because,
that's with my daughter. She has a little girl that's 4 who is very stubborn, just like she was. And she has opinions, and she is, you cannot change her mind. If she has made up her mind, then you might as well just call it a day. And Kimberly will call me up sometimes and just say, oh my goodness gracious, And then I start to laugh, and I always say, who does that remind me of? Let me see. There was this child. Who was it? And she's like, I know, Mom. I know.
Well, Jessie says, I know what she's thinking.
Yep.
I know exactly what she's thinking because I remember.
I remember. Yep.
Marjorie Deering says that's what makes being a grandmother grand. And Joyce of New
Absolutely.
York had said, the further we get from catastrophic events, the less important they become to younger people. They no longer think those things are possible. That is
true.
It. That's how I felt about the Great Depression. And my parents went through it, but still I was like, oh my God, if I have to hear about putting cardboard in your shoes one more time, I mean,
or tinfoil, washing
I really
tinfoil.
don't
It was like,
care.
oh my gosh, I don't want to hear about, we had to save the tinfoil out of our gum and we took it to school. And it was like, I don't care.
And Joe Conchel has a question for you. He said, hi, Teri. Do you have a guilty pleasure genre you like to read when you just want to disconnect from everything?
I actually love, it sounds terrible because I would never write one because I don't like to write books that are very formulaic, but I love just a good formula romance that I know what's going to happen. I know that they're going to get together, even though it doesn't look like they should. Some horrible thing's going to happen. They're going to separate. And in the end, they're going to get together and live happily ever after. I know that's what's going to happen. But I like reading those, I think, just because sometimes you just need to be able just to read.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot of books that have, lessons. There's lessons that you should learn, and there's things, and I love historical fiction and all of that. But sometimes, and sometimes too, if I'm writing something and it's really heavy, just to be able to pull away, and you don't even really have to think. Like, you can almost forget to read a page or two and you're still okay with the story. And sometimes I think you just need that, So yeah, that would be my guilty pleasure. And right now I've started trying to read a couple of rom-coms, and I'm actually enjoying. I wasn't sure what I was going to think, but I'm having fun with them because they make me laugh because, they're just kind of off the cuff funny, and I like it. Yeah.
I like watching rom-com movies, so I would imagine I would enjoy reading that book. Joyce Shelton in New York says, sometimes it's nice to know it's a guaranteed happy ending. Yes.
Yeah.
So we can all leave here tonight and go turn on the Hallmark Channel.
Exactly. So that's kind of what it is. It's, it's the Hallmarkish kind of, when you watch a Hallmark movie, that it's going to be happy in the end.
Well,
that even if there's something sad that happens, it's going to all wrap up nicely,
Exactly. And that's the truth. It is good to know it's guaranteed happy ending. I agree with you, Joy, and I like happy endings, actually.
I do. In fact, when I write, I try to wrap things up in such a way that even if not everything is happy, because my stories definitely have things in them that are sad and difficult, but that generally it wraps up nicely in the end so that you can walk away and feel satisfied. I have a real hard time with books that leave me hanging or just forget to wrap up 2/3 of the book. And so in my mind, I'm always fixing that. It's like, okay, so she went ahead and she eventually married him and they had 2 children. And, I've got the whole thing because I can't let it be the way it ended. So I have to create my own ending so I feel comfortable with the story.
I do too. When I was in school, you had to read The Tiger or the Lady, that story. I hated that because you don't know which door they choose, the tiger or the lady. And it was so frustrating to me. And so now if I watch a movie or read a book that has that kind of an ending, I have to finish it.
That's what I do. And I've been doing that though since I was a little kid. When I saw Gone with the Wind, in the end, when she says, I'll think about it tomorrow. I'm like, what? Go after him. You finally know you love him. What are you doing? Yes. So I've been fixing endings ever since I was a small child.
Oh, Joyce, this is a good point. Or you have to look on Google to see if someone can explain the ending to you. Oh my gosh. What was the name of that The Silo. Did any of you guys watch The Silo?
No.
It's on Apple. Maybe it's on Apple. It's a science fiction. Well, it's like a sci-fi, dystopian type.
Dystopia.
Okay.
And I mean, it definitely had one of those endings where our oldest daughter lives in California. She and her husband live in California. And so they were watching at the same time we were. And then we'd talk about the episodes every day, and we come to the last one and we were both like, what? The heck? What?
So, and that happens to me a lot when I read sci-fi or dystopian. I often at the end go, did I miss something? Did I miss? And the truth is that I may have missed something because I have trouble reading those genres. I enjoy them if they have really good characters, but a lot of times they get really deep into their worlds, and my mind is racing along trying to find the next character. And so I miss things, and we get to the end and it's like, oh, I'll bet there was something in that 3 pages that I skimmed that I really needed to know.
Let me ask you, I know a lot of our audience members would like to know, how do you do your publishing?
Okay, so I have a hybrid publisher.
Okay.
And I love the hybrid model. It has worked really well for me because it's very much like self-publishing, but you have some guaranteed professional help. So I know that I've got a good editor, and I know that I've got a good proofer, and I know that I have a good cover designer, and I know that I have someone that knows how to get all of that stuff on the back end up into all of these different formats so that when someone uploads it onto whatever device they have, it looks like a book.
That's
and
important.
I don't have to fool with that. And for me, that alone is worth having someone else help me.
Do you want to give any shout outs to any of those?
So it's Atmosphere Press is who I use, and they have their own people within their company. And so I've been working with the same editor. Her name's Megan, and I love her. And I just like having that little bit of professionalism behind me. As a brand new author, I was, what was that, 2 years ago? So I was 58 when I had my first book published. And I was very afraid that I was going to put something out there that I would then be embarrassed about later. That, it felt good to me, but I've never done this before, and I know what I meant to say, and I know what I want my readers to think, but did I really get that to happen? And so having some of these professional people behind me that guided me and allowed me to turn my book into something even better. The editing process the first time was horrible for me. I mean, it felt like I got someone writing, red notes all over my work. It felt like being back in school.
Well, you did have somebody writing.
Yeah. And the second time felt a little better. This third time, I was excited. I could not wait to turn it in because I knew that my editor would offer me suggestions that were going to make my book stronger. A lot of people have this idea that editors like rewrite for you. They don't write anything. They just say, this character is weak, or need more information, or what is this? And it helps you define for yourself, like, okay, what is that? Why did I put that there?
It's Rob and I were having a discussion about this the other day. It's the same thing. If you talk to a lawyer, they're going to be speaking in legalese, and you're not going to know, unless you're a lawyer, what the heck they're talking about, or somebody in medicine, or whatever person's in. And it's the same thing with each of us. We know what's going on up in here. And because we know what's going on up in here, and when we say a certain thing, it has so many other things associated with it that we know what that is, but not everybody else on the planet does. And so you're
an enemy like me, this
is that supposed to mean?
Right. And an enemy like me. So I have William as a 4-year-old child, and then I have him as an adult man looking back. Okay. And the adult man looking back, he's almost the narrator of this entire story, because this is during it's Veterans Day. So you just see him one day, but he is remembering his father. And so we keep getting to go back in time and go back and see this life. And to me, the whole story hung on adult William. And my editor says to me, I don't like adult William. He doesn't have an arc. You don't need him. My gosh, like this is and so I thought about it and I thought, you know what? She's just, so I told her, I think you're wrong. Like, he's really necessary. So she says to me, pull him out and just read his parts, and you're going to see he's not a strong character. And she was right. I had alluded to places where he changed, but I hadn't really allowed my reader to see it. She was wrong, however, that I needed to remove him. I needed to make him stronger. And so in my editing process, I went back and I found all of those places where I alluded to something, and I created actual content for my reader to see when I knew up here.
You knew that already.
I already knew it, and I assumed that everyone else was going to figure it out.
That's what I'm saying, and that's the problem when this is the whole problem we've been talking about all night long, is perceptions and the way that you perceive things, and
exactly
only through conversing and talking with each other and talking things out can you really fully understand what the person means, because they have all of this up here, and
you're not privy to it.
You're not, but when I'm talking to you, I think, well, they know what I mean. No,
they may not. They may not. So it was a very interesting thing. In fact, I found that, especially for someone like me who writes from several points of view, I now actually, once I'm done writing, I pull my book apart and I look at each character and I check to make sure that they have a full story arc. Because if you're going to have a main character, they've got to have a story arc. And if they don't, you need to either eliminate them or give it to them. Like, you've got to do something with it. And it was really very interesting, but I would have sworn she was wrong. And the truth was, she was both right and wrong. I did not need to get rid of him, but she was correct in that he wasn't strong. He, as I presented him, he was not what he needed to be. So
that's very good. Very good point.
Cool.
Well,
okay.
I think that our time is up.
Oh, what a shame. I'm having so much fun.
I know, me too. It's been a great conversation. I think the audience has been having a great time, and it's too bad that it's over. But yeah, we've gone like.
I was going to ask you about what you thought about the impact of AI on writing, but I guess I'm not. We'll save that for another night.
We'll save that for our next time, because
that's a big.
I'll come on again, right?
Yes, of course, and that is a big conversation. Joe Conjal says, "Great show tonight. Thank you, Terry, and of course, thank you, Robin Joan. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Paul Hollis says, "Great talk, Terry. Another awesome show, Robin Joan. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
You. And Joy Shelton, New York says, "Great show. Thanks, Joy.
Thanks, Joy.
It was really fun, you guys, and your comments were great, and the conversation with you was great. And I like it when we talk about really
real stuff,
real deep
real life.
stuff.
Yeah.
Marjorie Deering said, "All right, thanks for another wonderful episode. Thank you." And CW said, "Okay." You can't do that. I have to. CW said, I do.
Oh, okay.
CW said, enjoy the show. I usually do all of this, and he's helping me.
He's
and I have cataracts, and I need cataract surgery. So I read it here on the side, and he's thinking I can read it all the way over there, and I can't.
Oh, my.
Sometimes he helps me do the dishes too.
Yeah. It's lovely having a helper at home, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
I'm not the dish specialist. No.
Okay, but he makes a great sous chef.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us again. It was great to see you and visit again.
Yes.
It was great seeing you too.
going to move you over to the
It's been
side
so much fun.
and hang in there until, whoa, hang on. Hang in there until we come back to you.
Okay.
And
Oh, my
when we
goodness.
get done, I want to remind everybody next Wednesday, we're going to have the Magnolia Bluff 2023 Reveal Part 3. Brakefield and Berkey, Joe Conjal, and C.W. Hawes will all be talking about their 3 entries into the Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles. And that's going to be really good. And I think that is about all we've got, isn't it?
I think so.
All righty then. So then I guess until next time.
That's all, folks.
Night.
See you next week.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.